Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes from Connecticut, ranking member of the Intel Committee. Thanks so much for joining us, Congressman. You had a strong reaction out of the gate to this indictment last night, calling it one of the most sickening abuses of power in the history of the DOJ. Explain more. How do you see it, and what does this mean for the Justice Department?
Well, it's devastating for the Justice Department, right? I mean, here's a storied institution that had an immense reservoir of trust and credibility. You know, an awful lot of people of an older generation remember when the DOJ led the fight for civil rights in the South. You know, most recently, when the January 6th investigation was underway against President Trump, Joe Biden didn't say a word about it because that's the way it used to be. Now, and this must be immensely painful for the many, good lawyers of goodwill in the DOJ, the institution has been corrupted into a political tool for the president. And, oh, by the way, it's a clown show, an utter and complete clown show. And the Comey case is going to get thrown out of court, either summarily by a judge or, the jury will have the opportunity to utterly laugh at it. And that's going to be yet another black eye for this storied institution. But, of course, the point of this whole effort is not to secure a conviction of Jim Comey, it's to generate fear in the president's political opponents. And, he talks about Adam Schiff, he talks about all of his political opponents, and now this storied institution has been turned into a political tool of a president who has decided that the U.S. government is in his service, not in the service of the people of the United States.
There has been a flood of reaction from your Republican colleagues, and almost all in support of this indictment. Some saying justice has been served, others calling this accountability. Congressman Chip Roy calling for more. What do you make of these responses?
Well, I mean, I'm not one bit surprised, right? I work in that building and have friends on that side of the aisle, and they have become 100, not just wholly owned subsidiaries of Donald J. Trump Incorporated, they have become cult-like adherents to whatever the wishes of the president are. Look, I was going to say every single one of them. I'm not sure that that's actually true. But 10 years ago, these folks were pro-immigration. They were anti-tariff. They were small government. They would have gone out of their minds had a Democratic president demanded stakes in Intel and rare earth mining companies. They have abandoned every single one of their policy beliefs in the service of Donald Trump. And now, most lately, they have abandoned the oath that they take to the Constitution, because they're no longer serving the Constitution. They are serving Donald J. Trump. And I'll tell you, it's a scary thing, because the institution in which I work, the Congress, was deliberately set up not to be a loyal acolyte to the president, but to be a check and a balance. And almost without exception, every single Republican has decided that that is no longer their role to play.
Comey's not the only person on President Trump's radar. Last week, and we saw him press Attorney General Pam Bondi to charge Senator Adam Schiff, Letitia James as well. He's called for a number of other political enemies to face prosecution. What are you and other Democratic lawmakers prepared to do in response in this moment? And realistically, what can you do in the minority?
Right. I mean, unfortunately, that's the question, right? Particularly on the House side, the minority has almost no power at all. We have something of a bully pulpit. It doesn't begin to compare to the president's bully pulpit, but we're going to continue to tell the story of the complete corruption of our legal system in the service of Donald Trump's political objectives here. And by the way, what the implications for that may be down the road. My Republican friends live day to day. Just today is another day in which they don't want to get lit up on Truth Social by the President of the United States. So they don't have the perspective to think to themselves, my God, what about if these precedents that we are establishing ultimately get used against us by a malign Democratic president? They're so far from even thinking that. And of course, what they do is they are like, oh, well, this was just, they did it to Donald Trump. They did it to Donald Trump. Guess what? Donald Trump broke the damn law, right? And we know that because he was convicted of doing so in New York. And we know that because we also heard and saw what he said prior to January 6th. And look, I think the notion that, Donald Trump has always been willing to overstep the rules, to break the law, is not exactly a novel notion. So this whataboutism that they did it to Donald Trump is just yet another excuse and a self-rationalization so that my Republican friends can look themselves in the mirror in the morning without throwing up.
Congressman Jim Himes, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Adam.